I thought moving into this quiet neighborhood meant peace, but the nightmare began the moment the HOA decided my home and my life didn't fit their perfect picture. It started with small threats, petty notes slipped under my door, and fines for things that made no sense. But then, it escalated into something I never imagined. Harassment that crossed the line from annoying to downright criminal. One act, one decision, would not only destroy their reputation but also expose just how far some people will go to feel powerful. What happens when an HOA pushes the wrong person too far? When I first moved into the neighborhood, I thought I'd finally found a slice of calm. The street was lined with tall oaks that shaded the sidewalks in summer and painted them gold in autumn. Kids rode bikes without fear, neighbors waved as you drove by, and on the surface it felt like the kind of place where life slowed down just enough to enjoy it. For someone who had worked years to afford a home, this community felt like a reward. At first, the HOA seemed harmless. Their newsletters arrived neatly folded in my mailbox, filled with reminders about upcoming block parties and landscaping tips. There were rules, of course, how tall your grass could be, what color you could paint your shutters, even which flowers were preferred for front yards. But I brushed it off, figuring it was just the price of living in a well-kept neighborhood. I kept my head down, paid my dues, and minded my own business. For a while, life was peaceful. My weekends were spent tinkering in the garage, grilling on the patio, and slowly making the house my own. I got to know a few neighbors, some friendly, others keeping their distance, but nothing raised any alarms. Then little cracks began to show. I noticed the HOA president's car slowing in front of my home more than once, as if she were inspecting it. A few days later, I received my first notice, a warning about my trash cans being visible for too long after collection day. Seemed silly, but I let it slide. Then came another letter, this time about a small garden I had planted along the side of the house. Apparently, the variety of plants didn't align with the community's uniform aesthetic. It didn't stop there. Each note was worded politely, but the message was clear. I was being watched. Someone had decided my presence disrupted the picture-perfect image of the neighborhood. At first, I wondered if it was all in my head, but then a neighbor quietly mentioned that the HOA president kept files on certain houses. Files on her own neighbors. That's when I realized this wasn't just about keeping the neighborhood pretty. It was about control, and someone had decided I was going to be their next target. The first warning letter was irritating, but the second made me pause. The HOA president had flagged my garden for unauthorized plant varieties. I thought it was laughable, flowers and shrubs that I had bought with my own money, for my own yard, suddenly branded as unacceptable. I brushed it aside, but the seed of something ugly had been planted. Days later, another letter appeared in my mailbox. This time, it was a fine $50 for leaving my trash bin out beyond the designated 2-hour retrieval window. I had put the bin back the same evening, but apparently that wasn't enough. I called the number listed at the bottom of the notice, and the HOA secretary's chipper voice answered as if nothing was wrong. "Those are the rules," she said sweetly. "Consistency is important." Consistency, right? From then on, the letters didn't stop. A notice about the angle of my blinds, a warning about visible garden tools leaning against the side of the house, even a complaint that my dog's barking disrupted community harmony. The truth was, my dog barely barked at all. But the president had found a pressure point, and she pressed it harder with every week that passed. The tipping point came one Saturday morning. I had just finished mowing my lawn when the president herself, clipboard in hand, marched right up to me. Her eyes swept across my yard like a hawk circling prey. "We need to discuss compliance," she said, as though I were a child being scolded. Compliance. The word made my jaw tighten. She walked me through a laundry list of infractions, from the color of my mailbox flag to the non-standard bird feeder I had hung in the oak tree. Every item was followed by a threat of fines or further action. I stood there, sweaty from mowing, gripping the handle of my rake to keep from saying something I'd regret. It wasn't just rules anymore. It was harassment. The weeks that followed became a blur of escalating pressure. The fines stacked higher, $75, $100, $200, for things so absurd they felt invented. I tried appealing them, but each time the board reviewed my case, the outcome was the same: denied. I started to feel the walls closing in. Neighbors I'd once waved to now avoided eye contact. Some even whispered that it was safer not to get on the president's bad side. It was like living under a shadow, where every move outside my front door might be reported, documented, and punished. And then the rumors began. Someone spread word that my property was poorly maintained, that I let my dog run loose, that I was bringing down property values. None of it was true, but I could feel the shift. Where once I was just another neighbor, I was now the target, the outsider, the example the president wanted to make. The breaking point came late one evening. I walked outside to find a bright orange sticker plastered across my front door. Final warning, NON compliance. My stomach sank. Inside the envelope taped beneath it was a list of fines totaling over $1,000. This wasn't about rules anymore. This was about power. And I wasn't about to roll over. The next morning, I began documenting everything. Every letter, every fine, every conversation. I bought a small camera and installed it discreetly on my porch, capturing each time the president's car slowed in front of my house. Each time she walked the sidewalk with her clipboard, pausing just a little too long outside my gate. But the more I pushed back, the more aggressive the tactics became. I received a notice threatening a lien against my property if the fines weren't paid. Imagine that, losing your home because a bird feeder wasn't uniform. At the next HOA board meeting, the room was filled with neighbors, some pretending not to watch, others waiting for fireworks. I laid out my evidence: photos of letters, logs of fines, recordings of the president circling my property. My voice shook, not from fear but from the weight of months of frustration boiling over. The president sat there, arms folded, lips curved into a smug smile. When I finished, she leaned forward and said, "If you can't follow the rules, perhaps this isn't the right community for you." It wasn't a warning. It was a threat. From that day on, the harassment reached a fever pitch. Fines appeared weekly. Anonymous complaints poured in. A notice threatened to suspend my community privileges, as though I were a delinquent child instead of a paying homeowner. And then came the letter that pushed me past the point of no return. A formal notice of intent to foreclose on my home over unpaid violations. The foreclosure notice sat on my counter like a loaded weapon. Weeks of harassment had led to this, the HOA president's ultimate move. But what she didn't know was that I had been building my own case. I filed a formal complaint with the County Housing Authority, binder thick with evidence. At the next board meeting, I carried that binder in, calm, collected, and ready for war. One by one, I laid out the letters, the fines, the surveillance footage. Neighbors gasped, murmuring, turning against the president as her smugness cracked. The final blow came when the housing official leaned forward and said, "Issuing foreclosure threats without due process is not only unlawful but grounds for liability." Her face drained of color. For the first time, she was cornered. The fallout was swift. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, and this time the air was different. The president entered stiffly, her shoulders heavy, her confidence gone. The chair read the statement aloud. She was removed from her position, effective immediately. Gasps filled the room. Some clapped. Others whispered. She gathered her bag, eyes down, and walked out. Each step echoed not with authority but defeat. But it didn't end there. The investigation exposed years of misconduct, unauthorized fines, selective rule enforcement, even stolen funds. Refunds were issued, the board was rebuilt, and for the first time, real transparency ruled. Neighbors thanked me. They admitted they had been too afraid to speak up until now. I wasn't the outsider anymore. I was part of the community. And as I sat on my porch, golden retriever by my side, the bird feeder swaying gently in the oak tree, I realized something. This was more than a victory. This was home. And no one, not an HOA, not a bully, not anyone, would ever take that from me again.